Lately, I've been seeing this thing pop up on social media.
We are going to talk about how you can become a traditional wife.
How I went from a raging, free the nipple feminist
to becoming a traditional feminine woman.
The ways that I live traditionally in our modern world.
I don't understand. What's the point of, arguing with him?
Immaculately made up women gazing wide-eyed into their phones, singing the praises of being a tradwife or traditional wife. I'll let her explain.
If you are not familiar with the term tradwife, it is a woman who chooses to live a more traditional life with ultra-traditional gender roles. So the man goes outside the house, works, provides for the family. The woman stays home and she's the homemaker. She takes care of the home and the children if there are any.
Thanks for that. Though the idea of women being confined to the home while men do things like go outside and work isn't exactly new, the image of 1950s suburban domesticity has been given a new lease of life by the gals on TikTok.
Can you imagine me, the wife of that boorish, brainless madame?
Some younger millennials and Zoomers have decided to embrace living la vida casserole, dedicating themselves to cooking, cleaning, and child rearing while their husbands or boyfriends, chop firewood or go to their job in human resources. And look, I'm not saying there's anything inherently degrading about being a mum or making nice meals. I like cooking elaborate dinners. For that matter, my boyfriend does too. But the tradwife trend isn't just a way to talk about the experience of being a woman and doing domestic labour. It's saying that being a woman or expressing your femininity most fully means doing all the domestic labour. Men and women are meant to have rigidly distinct roles in the home, in their relationships, and crucially, in economic activity. So this isn't just about personal choice or individual preferences, it's advancing a right-wing political ideology and dressing it up as a lifestyle. So why is this important? 3 things. These women are often really young, in their 20s, and they're preaching the values of submitting to a husband to an audience of other young women. The tradwife trend doesn't exist in isolation. It's linked to deeply regressive political and social movements such as Christian and white nationalism and anti-feminism.
Feminism is an ideology which cannot be defended by feminists.
It's part of a wider shift of young people being dissatisfied with neoliberalism and wanting social change. So, let's talk about the way in which tradwife culture presents the ideal relationship. Men are providers, which means that only they participate in paid work and make all the financial decisions.
He is responsible for the final say in all of our financial decisions.
And this is presented as a kind of equality. While men and women have separate roles, they are equal in their value. Insisting on the equal value between paid employment and unpaid care work, which, by the way, is a feminist position, hence the Wages for Housework campaign of the 1970s, gets twisted into something much more sinister. Willingly giving up financial independence. This isn't all soft filters and sourdough inspiration. It wasn't until the 1960s in America and the mid-1970s in the UK that women had the legal right to open their own bank accounts or access credit, which meant that many women, particularly if they didn't work, were entirely financially dependent on a man, and this dependency didn't create happy marriages. As Betty Friedan found in her 1963 book The Feminine Mystique, middle-class American women who were living the suburban dream of husbands and housewifery were fucking miserable. In the 1950s, the average age of marriage for women was falling, and the number of children they were having was rising. In order to roll back on the relative social autonomy of women in the 1930s and 1940s, post-war American culture had begun to relentlessly focus on the idea that fulfillment for middle-class women meant being a housewife. For working-class women, of course, they were just meant to be the middle-class women's nannies, housekeepers, and helpmates. But even with the labour-saving technology of dishwashers, washing machines, and the sweat of women poorer than them, still the suburban wives of America were not satisfied. Friedan identified high rates of depression, dissatisfaction, and dependence on barbiturates. Women being forced into a life where they were denied autonomy and the use of all of their mental faculties was decimating their mental health. And with financial independence limited, or in some places impossible, it was incredibly difficult to get out. Though the tradwives of 2023 talk about men being in control of the household finances like it's a charitable act. Oh no, my stupid lady brain can't cope with taxes. It's a hugely dangerous thing to do.
I very much do so ask permission to spend any kind of money, even $1, I will ask.
According to Women's Aid, nearly a third of abuse survivors say that their access to money during the relationship was controlled by the perpetrator. A quarter report that their partner did not let them have money for essentials during the relationship, and a third have had to give up their home as a result of the abuse or leaving the relationship. I'm not saying that every relationship where men are in charge of the finances is abusive, just that giving up your financial autonomy and placing it in the hands of your partner is highly risky if things do indeed go wrong. If you've ever spent time on Tradwife TikTok, you'll notice a certain irony that despite rejecting modern womanhood, its advocates love nothing more than appropriating the language of feminism in order to advance anti-feminist goals.
Because men and women are so different, and that is okay. We as women just need to learn that that is okay. Stepping into your feminine side is okay. Being a mother is okay.
Once more, this dresses up being explicitly submissive to your husband as an act of individualist liberation. But the simple truth is that if it were possible for men and women to be socially equal but financially unequal, the Tradwife trend wouldn't be popular with reactionaries and the far right. It's the very fact that it advocates women voluntarily surrendering their autonomy by presenting it as an aspirational lifestyle which makes it so popular with conservatives, misogynists, white nationalists, and religious fundamentalists.
She was not wife material. I had to chop and screw her mind a little bit. I was playing like operation with her brain.
The Tradwife trend sits in the middle of an online content network, drawing together different subcultures, movements, and interests. Its focus on homemaking connects to other lifestyle content like recipes, interior decor, skincare, soft life, and homesteading, which is like farming but made aesthetic. Its interest in marriage and relationships, obviously, links to dating, psychology, and self-help. And its rigid belief in fixed gender roles, its rejection of feminism and liberal, left-wing, or progressive values, and its emphasis on Christianity, means that it has lent a feminine veneer to conservative far-right and white nationalist ideologies. One thing that comes up again and again is this idea of women submitting to their husbands as a form of submission to God.
Wives, respect your husbands. It's biblical. It's in the Bible.
You treat your husband as the head of the household and obey him. It's a sacrifice, but it is a sacrifice well worth it.
And this is meant to be a reciprocal relationship. You, as a woman, don't have to feel degraded by submitting to your husband, because the premise is that his religious beliefs stop him from behaving badly.
You want your wife to follow you? Be a man and follow Jesus and give her a reason to.
If only we had any history of religious men wielding their power to abuse those more vulnerable than them. Like with the example of finances, the idea of submission is that by giving up her independence, autonomy, and power, a woman will be taken care of by a good and godly man. She serves him, he serves Christ, but only one person is scrubbing out the toilet. But the influence of fundamentalist religion extends far beyond whatever private arrangements a couple may have as part of a household. Tradwife culture is dominated by aggressively anti-abortion, anti-birth control, and anti-sex views. Using the language and aesthetics of wellness influencers, Tradwife religious and conservative advocates have taken to TikTok in order to push disinformation about birth control. This can range from falsely calling the pill a carcinogenic to hyping out the rhythm or pull-out methods on social media. Just to be clear, these are less forms of contraception than they are playing pregnancy roulette.
All in black.
As well as celebrating the overturn of Roe versus Wade, some tradwives have allied themselves with the conservative right by taking aggressively transphobic stances, contrasting trans, queer, and even just feminist women to their authentic, natural, and politically reactionary model of femininity. There's a conspiratorial edge to some of the big tradwife social media accounts, from pushing anti-vax and anti-mask content, to claiming that feminism and LGBT rights movements are part of a depopulation agenda. There's an overlap, therefore, between the tradwife trend and white nationalism. This overlap can be implicit, subtle, and unconscious, taking place through aesthetics. This might be using adverts of white nuclear families from the 1950s to stand in for the universal ideal marriage, or contrasting the ideal tradwife to the stereotypical boss bitch, who's always associated with hip-hop culture and almost always black. This reinforces the idea that the ideal, most elegant, and most desirable model of femininity is white European. And women of colour are less feminine, more aggressive, and more in need of civilizing. But the connections can also be more explicit. One mumfluencer called Wife with a Purpose issued a white baby challenge, calling on women to have as many white babies as possible. This is an idea central to neo-Nazism. Its adherents justify their violent and hateful ideologies by talking about the need to secure a future for white children and making sure that the beauty of the white Aryan woman, their words, does not perish from the earth. Tradwives become an important component of the Great Replacement myth, pushed by white nationalists. If modernity is defined by diversity, both of lifestyles and of ethnicity, then the tradwife marks the return to an era of social and racial conformity. Women with choices and agency aren't usually so keen on submitting themselves to a life of reproductive captivity in the interest of furthering racism. Hence, tradwives. White nationalism, anti-choice ideology, and religious fundamentalism aside, if you want to know with certainty whether the tradwife trend is an empowering reclamation of domestic labour or just regular old sexism made palatable with TikTok aesthetics, just look at the kind of men who approve of it.
I don't like girls who are over-sociable. I don't like girls who know lots of people. I don't like girls who are always out.
As someone who, is totally down with looking at girls half naked on Instagram, it's fucking great, but...
Here are two men, both accused of sex crimes by the way, who have made money by sexualizing women. They've crafted their professional personas around having sex with lots of different women, but here they are celebrating tradwives and denigrating modern women. And that isn't because they want to treat women as a whole better, but because it serves as an excuse to treat lots of women much worse because they're not the good girls or whatever. That's not about embracing tradition, respect, and dignity. That's just old-fashioned misogyny. Okay, so while I think all these things explain the political impact of the tradwife trend, they don't explain why it's so appealing in the first place. The answer is simple. Modern life, in many ways, sucks. It's hard to make the case in an era of low wages, high anxiety, precarious work, and extortionate rents that women are liberated just through entering the labour market. Everyone knows by now that leaning in alone won't make you a girl boss. The relative economic security of previous decades, a job for life, housing you could afford, pensions, and a debt-free life has been obliterated in the slash and burn of neoliberalism. If you're under 45 or you don't own a house, the future can feel fucking bleak. You add to that the experiences that many people have dating, like being ghosted or being treated like you're disposable. It's no wonder that people feel dissatisfied, intensely so, with the status quo. There is a longing for care, for order, for security and certainty. And the fantasy being sold by tradwives is that all those things are in reach for women. If only we give up our autonomy and return to the gender roles of an imagined and idealized past. And that's the thing. The lifestyle being sold is a fantasy. It's fictitious. As my colleague Moya Lothian-McLean has argued, tradwife TikTok doesn't really show images of domestic labour. It depicts domestic leisure.
Personally, I believe I'm not meant to work. I'm meant to do this all day.
It's like an extended session of playing dress up. You get to glide around wearing floaty skirts and dresses, organising your snack cupboard and baking bread. And look, that's my idea of a nice day too. Who doesn't like an opportunity to feel gorgeous and eat nice things? This idealised portrayal of domestic labour chimes with a wider social media trend of soft life, a lifestyle of skincare and sourdough, taking the path of least resistance and doing so aesthetically. As work has become less rewarding, literally, the workers' share is declining relative to asset wealth, people seek comfort in images of serenity, relaxation, quiet, and nourishment. What influencers do, whether they're tradwives or Instagram babes, is tap into that human desire for respite and channel it into something else. So for your typical wellness influencer, that'll be woo-flavoured consumerism. And for tradwives, it's an ideological insistence that if women make themselves dependent on men, they can find the ease and fulfillment they've been longing for. So, what to do about it? I think it means generating a different vision of fulfillment, happiness, emotional nourishment, and family life, which isn't predicated on the patriarchal domination of women. Work won't set women free, and neither will being ruled by men. It's freedom, equality, and reciprocal care that will.